Fatshark is coming out of hibernation. They gave us a little community update on Friday, January 23rd, looking back at what they brought to the table for Darktide in 2025, and we're already more than a week into 2026's first in-game event. I've been getting asked a lot about what I hope will happen for Darktide in 2026 and what I think is actually likely, so this is the perfect opportunity for all of us to sit down and talk about it. Let's dissect Fatshark's self-assessment, grade it on a scale of asking the question, was this content, and see if we can look at what's missing to know where Darktide might be going for 2026. Obey my cat! Hit the subscribe button. At the end of 2024, Fatshark wrote a small pre-winter break blog to the community letting us know that they were heading off for their regular holiday, which is great. That memo set up some expectations for what we were going to see in 2025. It said, but we're not done. 2025 will be even better. We have 4 main updates planned next year, which includes new maps, new weapons, further improvements for Havoc, and much, much more. New maps, new missions, new weapons, those are all examples of pieces that are very clearly content for updates. But there's a lot of other types of updates, and whether or not they cut the mustard as content is honestly kind of subjective. We're going to try and categorize different types of updates into either definitely being new content or not being new content. So first, let's take a look at what categories updates tend to fall into. There's the obvious ones like I already mentioned: new maps, new missions, new enemies, entirely new weapons, new classes, and new game modes, along with reworks or additions to existing content like new weapon marks added to existing families, existing class balance passes and skill tree reworks, weapon balancing, quality of life and UI upgrades, existing mission reworks, and dialogue additions. But the question is, are all of these types of updates created equally? And even more important, are they all content? Let's start with the first update of 2025, Nightmares and Visions. This had a new game mode that came with 2 maps, a complete rebalance of the Ogryn skill tree and weapons, and the release of Havoc 2.0, changing its leveling system for players and adding new modifiers. Exactly how much of this update can we classify as new content? Well, the new game mode introduced, the Mortis Trials, is definitely new content. It had a map for the Carnival District, as well as a Manufactorum-inspired map, and also introduced a new storytelling device called Memory Echoes that gives us character backstory that we otherwise would have never known. This requires a good amount of writing and new voice acting for each set, as well as making a character model for each character with memories to show up in the Psychonium, so it's pretty substantial, most of the time. We'll revisit that later. There's no question that the Mortis Trials definitely qualifies as wholly new content in Nightmares and Visions, even if Darktide's player base dropped it quickly and it was kind of dead on arrival. Now on to the Ogryn player character rework. This was a massive overhaul, almost 40 pages of notes to detail everything that they updated according to Fatshark. A fair number of new talents were added to his tree, but overall it was just a lot of cooldown reductions, percentage buffs, things like that. And for the weapons, no new Ogryn weapons were added at all, just attack patterns and various stat tweaks for his existing ones. Since most of this involves changes to an existing player character and weaponry, I don't really think it's worthy of being called content, even if it was a substantial and needed overhaul. For Havoc 2.0, the game mode was left mostly the same. The biggest change was that players who win a Havoc game all get their Havoc rank boosted immediately instead of having to wait for the week to end, and there was the inclusion of a few new Havoc modifiers like heinous rituals. New modifiers, especially ones that involve needing to cobble together new animations, keep Havoc fresh and adds extra challenges that didn't exist before, so I'll give that a 25% content score. So out of the 3 main pieces of Nightmares and Visions, one component was 100% new content, one I personally feel is is 0% new content, and the few additions of modifiers to Havoc did bring something new to the table for a 25% content score, which is pretty much just 1/3 of the update consisting of new content. Now, to be clear, I don't think Nightmares and Visions was a bad update. Honestly, I think it was one of the strongest we got for the year. But if we're looking at this with a clinical eye and asking ourselves how much new content did Darktide get in 2025, it wasn't even half new content. Let's move on to the Battle for Tertium update. This is where things get a little more complicated. The free parts of Battle for Tertium included a rework of Darktide's main mission board. Sedition difficulty was removed, Auric difficulty stopped being its own separate mission board and moved to just being a standard difficulty, and the way player characters unlock new difficulties was changed to winning enough games at the current difficulty level you're at. None of this can be classified as new content. Part of the reason for this change in how mission difficulties are unlocked is because the other major component of the update was that many of Darktide's missions were put into a campaign order. Now, instead of reaching the end of the storyline about your player character's ascension through the warband upon hitting character level 30, you instead get this storyline in the Battle for Tertium campaign. The campaign itself does have an amount of new content in it. Pretty much all of the missions have a smattering of new dialogue for them that help clarify what the purpose of the mission is. The Hourglass missions have been significantly rewritten with brand new voice acting both from Zola and Admonition's mysterious cultist, providing a significant amount of lore about Admonition's background and a little further foreshadowing to Zola's potential connection to them. After every single mission, there is a new short cinematic that plays with brand new voice acting from different warband officers explaining the impact of the mission you just finished on the overall war effort. And there is a long, incredibly well done cutscene after the Orthus offensive showing us Wolfer and the Mobian Sixth's fall to chaos on Nox Alpha. But still no new missions added. Overall, I'm giving the campaign portion of the update a 50% content score because the added cutscenes, voice acting, and mission rewrites I'm sure took a significant amount of effort, but it's still limited on what's new for longtime players. There was the addition of Ship Mistress Imora Brahm's memory echoes to the Mortis Trials, and her memories packed some real doozies of lore drops such as Gene Stealers getting on board the Morning Star, and the implication that Inquisitor Grendel is actually her great-grandfather and in some kind of condition that keeps him trapped on board the ship. But no new Mortis Trials map, so 50% content score. And lastly, the crown jewel of the Battle for Tertium update was the release of the Arbites player class. This class came with 3 personalities brought to life by 6 voice actors, 2 unique melee weapons, 2 unique ranged weapons, a dog, and was 100% absolutely brand spanking new content. It was also locked behind a $12 paywall, and that was a tough pill for some people to swallow. Regardless of the minor amount of grumbling, the Arbites DLC performed insanely well, bringing Darktide to a wider audience, making it the game to watch at 2025's Warhammer Skulls event, and was overall a gigantic success. This might be considered a bit of a dick move, but I am not going to count paid DLC toward the overall content score for an update. Darktide was sold to players as a game that would be live service and consistently updated with content for players who purchase the game. DLC classes are fun, fantastic, and something on the wish list for a lot of players, but they are not the force driving Darktide forward when it comes to player engagement. At this point, even if Fatshark dropped an Adeptus Mechanicus player class tomorrow for Darktide, the interest and enthusiasm it brings will be short-lived if it isn't followed up with new missions, new penance rewards, new boss fights, and more than just one piddling enemy per year. Gameplay and mechanics are the heart and soul of Darktide, but intrigue, challenge, and keeping the gameplay loop fresh are what keeps people coming back for more. And nothing drove that point home better than the Bound by Duty update. Fatshark kinda lost me here with this one. Bound by Duty brought a new Mortis Trials map, which, sure, that is a new piece of content. It was a new piece of content for a game mode that not many people play or are interested in, but yeah, full marks for being new. And of course, what is a Mortis Trials update without a new set of memory echoes. This is where I started to feel really disappointed because there was only like 10 new memories total, somewhere in that ballpark. A couple for Morrow, a couple for Zola, and a couple for the new character, which was Proctor Exacted Zoran. At least 3 of these new memory chapters weren't actually new content at all. They were audio from Vox intercepts that have been up on Fatshark's YouTube channel for a year or more now, depending on which Vox. Not only that, but none of these memories came out swinging with any heavy-hitting lore or backstory. Up until this point, the Mortis Trials were becoming really exciting to get new material from because they dropped some absolutely insane pieces of story. We learned that Sergeant Major Morrow was actually a soldier in the first War of Armageddon, at least one gene stealer stowed away on the Morning Star, and Wolfer is likely Tiberon Zola, the brother of our own Explicator Zola. So when we only had a few new chapters of Mortis Trial memories, my hopes were high that we were going to get some kind of insane mic drop delivered to us in just a few short chapters. Instead, we learned that Morrow helped Zola learn how to get around Rannick to pull off the Orthus offensive mission. She's been going down to Atoma without anyone knowing or getting permission again since the events of the Dark Communion, likely looking for her brother, Captain Wolfer. The Havoc missions are bizarrely considered canon events. Tensions for leadership are high due to a 3-way power struggle between Rannick, Duquesne, and Zoran, and Rannick is actually kind of a bro. That's basically it, which is rough. It leaves the Mortis Trials with a 75% new content score because the map itself is entirely new, but the memory echoes were really lacking and some of them were genuinely reused content that already existed elsewhere and many of us have heard before. I kind of hate deducting points for that one because a lot of people have been saying that they want all the Vox transmissions and intercepts to be accessible in the game, but pulling only a few of them out for Bound by Duty and throwing them into a game mode you have to grind to unlock them that, again, not many people seem all that interested in playing, it misses the mark. Bound by Duty added one entirely new weapon into the game, the Power Falchion, which is like a one-handed version of the Zealot's Relic Blade. We'll call it 100% new content. The bolt gun and bolt pistols both got a new weapon mark added to them, which was explosive impact rounds that are more appropriate for horde clearing than high penetration damage. It does bring a new type of gameplay and build variety to this weapon family, so 50% content. 2025's new permanent enemy edition, the Plasma Gunner, was added at this time, which eventually settled out into a good place in the roster. And lastly, the update's main focus was on a sweeping skill tree and talent rebalancing for all classes, bringing the original standard player characters up to skill tree quality similar to Ogren's rework and the new Arbites class. As I previously outlined, I don't consider rebalancing to be content. Out of the 4 major components of this update, one part was 75% new. I am begrudgingly calling the Falchion 100% new. The new weapon marks are 50% new, and the class rebalancing is absolutely 0% new for an overall content score of 3/4 new content. That's really not bad at face value, but given what the other updates and especially Mortis Trial story elements brought to the table within this year, Bound by Duty felt lacking. And that brings us to the Q4 No Man's Land update. Finally, a new map was added to Darktide's main game roster. It is a shorter operation called No Man's Land, but it fucking slaps and provides a decent challenge on high-level difficulties. With this new operation, another mini campaign called The Road to No Man's Land was put together. It consists of the mission Rolling Steel, which has been left entirely intact as is and nothing new added to it, Refinery Delta 17 in the Hourglass, which was completely rewritten to frame Duquesne and Knight Commander Dragor discovering the location for No Man's Land, and then of course the No Man's Land mission. The operation itself is obviously 100% new content, but the mini campaign was only one new mission out of 3 with a dialogue rework and more cutscenes, so I'm giving the Road to No Man's Land campaign overall a 2/3 content score. Fatshark added a new personality for the Ogren, a very welcome surprise that no one was really expecting, and that's 100% new content. Then the rest of the update was more tweaks and balance passes, except of course excuse for another paid DLC. The Hive Scum was introduced with this update, and like the Arbites class, has 3 personalities, 6 incredibly talented voice actors to bring the personalities to life, 3 unique melee weapons, 3 unique ranged weapons, a completely new mechanic with their class stim drug. It's a full, robust, completely unique class. For my money, Hive Scum is the most fun player experience in Darktide. I love it. Genuinely and sincerely, it's hard for me to imagine having more fun with a class in this game, which is why it pains me to say that again, I am not counting this paid DLC towards the update's overall new content score. Here's why. Let's compare Darktide and its content structure to its biggest competitor in the same niche and IP, Space Marine 2. Both are team-based PvE horde shooter games with an emphasis on melee combat in the Warhammer 40,000 IP. At launch, Darktide costs $40 USD for the standard edition and $60 USD full price for the Imperial edition. Space Marine 2 was $60 at launch for the standard edition, and these days the first anniversary bundle will set you back $90 and the 2-year anniversary bundle $120. At an entrance fee, Space Marine 2 is considerably more expensive than Darktide. However, Space Marine handles monetization of their game very differently. All actual playable content for Space Marine 2 is completely 100% free. Their first new class is coming by the end of first quarter of 2026, and it will not be paid content. All of the new weapons, game modes, maps, and enemies they've released since launch have been free for all players that own the game to access, and not locked behind a paywall accessible only through purchasing a cosmetic pack, which is their only form of paid DLC. As of early February 2026, Space Marine 2 monetizes only cosmetics through packs that unlock the ability to make your custom Space Marine look like your favorite chapter or legion. These cosmetic packs start at $5 USD, and for individual packs go up to $10 USD, but it can be up to $40 if you buy a bundle of the year's cosmetics at once. These purchases are done through the Steam store or your platform store and are just a straight across purchase with zero fucking around with a premium in-game currency purchase. If you were to purchase Space Marine 2 at $60, then both the cosmetic bundles for its 2 seasons, you would more than double your all-in cost for the game at $140 USD. But if you only have 1 or 2 cosmetic packs you want, realistically, you're looking at $10 to $20 at most to unlock everything to tune in how you want your special Space Marine to look. Comparing that to Darktide, which had 2 of the biggest chunks of new content for 2025 locked behind a paywall, on top of how Fatshark has chosen to monetize cosmetics, it doesn't look as great at face value. First of all, the Arbites and Hive Scum DLCs cost at minimum $12 USD each, and the deluxe editions for each class being $19. So if you bought the standard edition for each class, you're already more than halfway to paying for Darktide again, and if you ponied up for the deluxe editions, you basically have purchased Darktide again. On top of this, Darktide is already monetizing their premium cosmetic shop at a pretty steep fee when you compare it with Space Marine 2. Darktide uses an in-game premium currency that you must purchase with real money in order to then use that currency to make cosmetic purchases, which is a method of handling premium purchases that is often considered predatory or scummy because of the way that systems like that could be abused. If you have to buy a currency pack instead of just making a straight across purchase for a cosmetic in your currency, it often means that you'll have some small amount of extra pretend currency kicking around. The next time a cosmetic comes up in the shop that you want, you'll have some amount of the in-game pretend money, but not quite enough to get you that new skin, meaning that you have to go buy another currency pack, usually leaving you with another excess sitting in your account after purchase. Either the cycle continues, or you'll have an amount of this premium currency just sitting in your account that you're not going to do anything with and should instead be real money in your pocket if these cosmetics were able to be purchased as just a flat dollar amount straight across. And when you look at the price of the cosmetics themselves, typically a single class set of whatever the skin du jour is will set you back around 2,400 Aquillas, which is $11.50 USD. This single cosmetic set in Darktide is already more expensive than the highest price single piece cosmetic pack in Space Marine 2. Here's where the real kicker comes in. One cosmetic pack for Space Marine 2 will let you customize and apply cosmetics for every class in the game to date, potentially the upcoming Tech Marine notwithstanding. I don't know. For Darktide, that $11.50 or 2,400 Aquillas is the skin set price for one single class. If you want this cosmetic set for all the player classes, you're now looking at $46 USD, so almost 50 bucks to deck out all of your characters, which is well over the cost of Darktide itself just to pick up one skin set for all the player classes it's available for. There's also weapon skins and piecemeal cosmetics like helmet packs costing anywhere from $5 to $10, and remember, you can't buy the cosmetic itself straight across. You have to buy the premium currency, artificially jacking up your cost and leaving you with the change left over that you should have been able to hold onto as cash in your pocket. Since the premium cosmetic store uses an in-game system, this also means you can't sign up to be notified when skins might go on sale through the Steam store, like the Space Marine 2 cosmetics. Now, am I saying that Fatshark is abusing this system or doing anything differently from a vast majority of games out there that offer premium cosmetics? No, I would definitely say not. I know this is a pretty negative take of Darktide's monetization, but I definitely think it's a fair critique that is long overdue and really needs to be talked about now, since a large amount of the actual content brought to Darktide in 2025 was locked behind a paywall. To reiterate, I think Fatshark has done a fantastic job with the classes, and I recognize that a ton of work, far more than just gameplay mechanics and balancing, went into creating these. 12 voice actors plus the entire original player cast needed to do voice work and be paid, on top of all of the writing for missions, dialogues, and cutscenes. That's a huge undertaking, and Fatshark is not working with the studio size or budget anywhere close to what Saber and Focus Entertainment have, the creators of Space Marine 2. But my ultimate point is that 2025 is not a sustainable structure for Darktide content, especially since it already has a very healthy amount of monetization that many players participate in. I'm starting to get a little worried that pushing paid classes over free content updates with actual content in them might be the direction we're going for Darktide. So far, we've only heard one peep from Fatshark about content to expect for 2026, and surprise, surprise, it's them telling us that another paid DLC class is on the way. From their first community communication of the year, we are happy with last year's releases and we're not aiming to slow down in 2026. To tease a bit, we can tell you that the next class has already been in the works for quite some time now, and we can't wait to show you more when the time is right. Before that, we will have another release though, so you will have to wait a bit, but we are pretty sure you'll like this one too. Darktide is certainly going places in 2026. To me, the way this reads is that the next class is probably going to be announced at Warhammer Skulls 2026 and will release as the second quarterly update of 2026. This would make sense. That's exactly what they did for the Arbites release last year, and the hype for that announcement was so real, I wouldn't be surprised if they're gearing up for a repeat performance, which would be great. Even if it's for a paid DLC, more eyeballs and attention on Darktide is fantastic because this is genuinely the best PvE co-op horde shooter in the gaming market, period. It honestly deserves to be the flagship Warhammer 40k game over something like Space Marine 2. I said it, sorry, not sorry. There will hopefully be one content update between now and Warhammer Skulls, and a quarter one update will likely release somewhere around the end of March if I had to guess. Fatshark has made quarterly updates to Darktide in at least 2024 and 2025, and I don't really expect them to deviate from that pattern now. So if they're not going to give us a roadmap or information about what might be coming other than another paid class, let's see if we can channel our inner Nostradamus and prognosticate what content will be added to Darktide in 2026. For quarter one, which as I said I predict will land around late March, I know a lot of people have latched on to the phrase Darktide is certainly going places in 2026 as an indicator of what content the first update might hold. After Fatshark's communication teasing that our player characters would be thrown into the trenches proved to be literal for the No Man's Land operation, I have to say I think there's a chance that this could be a literal teaser. If it is, then I have two theories on what going places could mean. The first is that perhaps we might get a new game mode similar to the Chaos Waste excursions of Vermintide 2, where our characters venture far outside the walls of Tertium into the wastes of Atoma, or perhaps the mysterious sister hive city our operatives have been whispering about since Darktide's launch. The other option I could potentially see is a single mission that takes us to Nox Alpha to investigate the nature of the heretical presence we know lurks there and how it connects to the admonition and the siege of Tertium. Those are my two best theories. Other components of the update could include more pages added to Hestia's penance rewards, a rework on Melk money and making his weekly assignments feel like they're more worth doing, and possibly another rework on the Ogren class. Quarter 2, which I expect would probably be somewhere mid to late June, will likely be the next DLC class as its main focal point if Fatshark's message is to be taken literally that there's one update between now and when we'll hear more about the class. I know about the code word cryptic being data mined for this class, and a lot of people are theorizing that it could finally be the long requested AdMech player class. I think that this is a really strong contender, but I also think that there's a lot of narrative foundation laid that could be pointing us in the direction of an Eldar player class as well. I will say that if Fatshark were to drop an AdMech player class now, it's one that has been so hyped and requested that it might take the wind out of the sails for future classes because nothing will be as anticipated as AdMech, so I'm mentally and emotionally prepared for it to not be the Mechanicus quite yet. The fall update for Darktide has been more game mechanics and balance focused the last 2 years running, so if this update in one I'm guessing would be mid-September followed, it could be more substantial balance changes to classes and their skill trees, the addition of new weapons, and maybe finally a rework on curios, since Fatshark said back in 2024 with the Unlocked and Loaded update that those items wouldn't be included in the itemization and crafting rework. I would guess that a new Mortis Trials map or short operation might go here too. And lastly, the winter update, which is also around the anniversary of Darktide's launch, with the updates tending to drop in late November to early December. This is a bit of a wild card update. Obviously in 2025 we got a second DLC class and the single new mission added to Darktide. In 2024 it was the arrival of the third mission for the year, and it was a doozy, with it revealing Admonition is likely trying to summon a Great Unclean One and a demonic incursion. If the new class Fatshark alluded to doesn't get announced at Warhammer Skulls for 2026, this is my second best guess as to when the new class would arrive. It is possible that a second class could release just like 2025, but if Fatshark scales it back on only doing one bonus class per year, which I think would be a much more reasonable pace for premium paid content, then hopefully that means that the 2026 quarter 4 update would contain something else that's hype worthy. Chaos Waste is a contender as always, because I know a lot of people who are longtime Tide game players have been dying to see that type of game mode added. However, Darktide's enemy roster is still languishing and the boss fight situation is downright dismal. So these are two pieces of content I personally would hope Fatshark is looking at addressing and really ramping up for 2026. Gene Stealers, Demons, the return of Rinda Karnak, hunting down, fighting, and discovering who or what Ermal Skarkle really is. All of these are excellent choices for Darktide to really blow the doors off the game, get people engaged and excited about it again, and carry the momentum through their holiday break. Despite my concerns, there's no doubt that 2025 was an incredibly successful year for Darktide. Player counts have been recovering and stayed higher for a longer period of time than we've seen in a while. Fatshark has continued to show up with regular communication, events to help encourage engagement between updates, updates and shows no signs of being ready to close the book on Darktide. To the contrary, hopefully the release of new classes is a sign that it's finally kicking into gear to push forward with consistently new content. But if the new content is focused on paid premium DLCs, that is going to get tiresome and burn through all the goodwill and trust Fatshark has rebuilt with bringing Darktide into a state that it should have been in at launch. Unless Fatshark shows up and gives us a roadmap, even using the way Focus Entertainment communicates about Space Marine 2 with clear but not completely specified content expectations per quarter, we as fans are just kind of left in the dark, myself included. Genuinely, I have no idea what's to come as of making this video, not even for the first update. As always, only time and Fatshark can pull us out of being in the dark when it comes to expectations for what the fuck is gonna happen in Darktide. Thanks so much for watching and for all of your support. Special shout out to my top supporters Leah S., Andrew Brown, Cabus, Rich, William McQueen, Ben, Sam Walcroft, Cameron, Darkslide, Sam Spry, Commander Orf, Ginge Dread, Ripped Limbo, El Zunix, Allburn Drake, Lord Darrenissus, Gen X Culture, Mr. E, Windows Dan, Semdera, Macaroni Tuesday, Cal, Mr. Schrodinger, ZZR, The Speedy Turtle 4, Din Fairy, Freakazoid, Lord Pingu, I Am Hard Days Mike, Jason Clark, Gamermaster, CTQZ, Evan Solomon Burger, Harbinger, Sexy Rotfly, Kron Chaos, The Fargos, The Thunder Guardian, Aubrey Bessie, Frank the Helldiver, and Macrove.